You stand in Paris, October 13th, 1307. The corridor stinks of damp wool and iron. Your place in medieval history now rests on canon law and nerve. Fists pound the door. The bar jumps in its brackets. You count the blows. You steady your breath. You are a brother of the temple. Your belt lies at your hip. Your knife hangs flat under the cloak. Behind you, two novices whisper a prayer. You raise a hand. Silence returns. The next strike will come soon. The next strike will split the bar. You know the orders. You keep the rule. You do not waste words. You do not panic the young. You do not act alone. You open only on command. You keep discipline even when steel waits outside. The house commander is not here. He rode out before dawn to check a cart team. He left you in charge. You do not like the timing. You must choose a path. You think of the path that led here. Years earlier, Troyes 1129. You stood before clerics and lords. The order took its rule there. Bernard of Clairvaux shaped its tone. Poverty, chastity, obedience, no private gifts, no private letters, no soft clothes, no bright colors, no hunting, no dice, no boasting. Eat in silence while a brother reads. Sleep clothed. Keep your belt near. Boots by the bed. Be ready when the horn sounds. They cannot enter without a writ. Back to the hall. The knocking returns. It slows. Counts. Someone out there gives orders. You hear mail shift. You smell oil and ash. A royal party has come. You do not know the exact charges yet. You know the pattern. When a king needs coin, he names sins. He sends men with seals and lists. They ask about secret rites. They ask about spitting. They ask about idols. They ask about kissing. You have heard all this before in whispers from ports and fairs. You also know this. The rule binds your tongue on chapter matters. You speak only with leave from your master or chapter. You do not describe internal penances. You do not shame a brother in public. The questioners already chose their story. You will not debate them through the wood. You need time. You send one novice to the chapel, one to the gate stair. You tell them to listen, then return. No bravado. No fights in corridors. You order a lay brother to douse lamps near the wool room. Darkness hides goods from greedy eyes. You gather the house seal and the archive key. You check the chest. It holds account rolls. It also holds letters from nobles who owe. Those names matter. Those names tempt. You cannot let loose paper feed a fire against your house. You plan what to move if they breach. The clock runs against you. You study the door. Thick oak. Iron straps. Strong hinge pins. A side post shows a split from the last winter frost. One more hard blow may open it. You mark the angle. You tell a brother to brace a bench under the bar. You speak low and clear. Your voice holds the room. You allow no panic. You place two men by the side passage. If the door goes, they fall back in steps. If the door holds, you still must answer the writ. You straighten your cloak. You draw your hood. You will face them as the rule commands. In order, without fear, without lies. What rule do they fear most? You think they fear the one that unites all the rest. Obedience under silence. A chapter that judges inside the walls. A discipline that covers fault with penance but not with gossip. Outsiders cannot see it. Outsiders invent tales when they cannot see. You lock the chest. You hand the key to the oldest lay brother. He tucks it under his belt string. He nods once. He understands. The next knock lands. The bar groans. The bench slides a hand's width. A pin pops on the left hinge. Steel scrapes the plate. A voice calls your name. The king's seal waits. The house waits. You set your palm on the bolt. You draw breath to answer. The hinge screams. The door would not hold forever. The story began long before. After 1119, a small band formed around Hugues de Payens in Jerusalem. Their task was simple: guard the roads for pilgrims. Their home stood near the former temple site. People soon called them the poor knights of the temple. They lived hard. They asked the church for form and approval. In January 1129, at the Council of Troyes, they received both. Rules matter most when steel is near. The council gathered bishops, abbots, and lay lords. Bernard of Clairvaux advised them. He later wrote for the new order and praised its purpose. The council issued a Latin rule. It fixed the life of the brothers: poverty, chastity, obedience, all goods held in common, no private gifts, no private letters, no bright colors, no fur, no long hair, no dice, no hunting with dogs or hawks. Eat in silence as a text is read. Speak only with leave. Sleep clothed with a belt near and boots at hand. Be ready for the horn and the call. Silence breeds guesses. Guesses breed fear. The rule set times for prayer and work. It set the number of robes. It fixed how they traveled. It banned excess in food and wine. It told them to treat guests with order and reserve. It warned against idle talk. It forbade boasting about wounds. It ordered that brothers not kiss women, even relatives, to avoid scandal. If a man broke a rule, he faced penance from the chapter. Bread and water, extra fast, loss of the white cloak, temporary removal from the table. The language was plain. The penalties stung but aimed to reform. Discipline works only when words are few. The order built a structure to enforce this life. At the top stood the master. Below him worked the seneschal, who managed the household. The marshal handled weapons, horses, and war. Commanders ran local houses called commanderies. A draper issued clothing. A tercopolier led light troops in the east. General chapters met to judge hard cases and set policy. Local chapters met weekly. Each man knew his place and duty. Promotion came through merit and time, not wealth or birth. The white cloak marked the full brother knight. The red cross appeared later, in the mid-12th century, as a badge of service. Power rarely forgives closed doors. Early privileges followed the rule. In 1139, a papal bull confirmed key rights. It freed the temple from local tithes and dues. It let the order build oratories and bury its dead. It allowed brothers to collect alms across Christendom. Later bulls, in 1144 and 1145, strengthened these grants. They gave the order freedom of movement and exemption from many local controls. Most crucial, they placed the temple under the direct authority of the Pope. Bishops could not try the brothers in ordinary courts for internal matters. Disputes went up the chain within the order or to Rome. This closed one question: why bishops held back? What happened inside the chapter still remained a second question. The rule kept its process private. Confession of faults occurred before the brothers. Penance was assigned there. The chapter guarded names and details to protect reputations and prevent gossip. Outsiders heard little and invented much. Rumor filled the gaps with talk of strange tests and oaths. The reality was strict, tedious, and relentless. Kept men in line. It also made enemies beyond the walls. Rivals resented the order's freedom from tolls and tithes. Debtors resented the order's ledgers. Privileges turned rivals into enemies. Through the 12th and 13th centuries, the temple grew. Houses spread from Portugal to Hungary. Farms, mills, and ports funded the war in the east. Couriers moved letters and credit. Receipts replaced heavy coin on long roads. Kings used the order as bankers and messengers. Respect mixed with strain. The more the order served, the more it stood apart. Its courts remained its own. The speech remained guarded. Its leaders answered to Rome, not to princes. Back to Paris, 1307. A royal seal faced a papal shield. The writ outside had force in the city. The rule inside still claimed its ground. The men in the corridor smelled oil, damp wool, and fear. The brothers in the hall held a chest of names and debts. Chapter business stayed within the house. That privacy now fed suspicion. The hinge gave a long cry. The next voice named the master and demanded the keys. The door shuddered again. The first brother stepped forward to answer. The bar shook again. The house commander still had not returned. The senior brother answered through the crack. He asked for the writ. He named the rule. He asked for time to gather the chapter. The sergeants waited. The clerk read the charges. The brothers listened in silence. The answer would take shape inside the house, not in the hall. Order buys minutes when steel takes hours. Years earlier, everyday life set the frame. The rule governed clothes, food, and sleep. 2 or 3 tunics. 1 mantle in season. No fur. No bright dyes. Hair and beard plain. In the dormitory, they slept in shirt and breeches. Belts near. Boots by the bed. A lamp burned low. A brother kept watch. If the horn sounded, men rose fast and formed ranks. In the refectory, they ate in silence. A reader recited scripture or a sermon. Gestures replaced chatter. Waste drew reproof. So did jokes. So did pride in wounds. Routine holds men when fear tries to scatter lines. Contact with women stayed limited. The rule warned against kisses even with kin. The aim was clear: avoid scandal. Visits required permission. Gifts from outsiders went to the common chest. No private letters without leave. No trinkets tucked in belts. No pets. No hunting with dogs or hawks. No dice. No wagers. Speech stayed guarded. A brother did not boast of battle. He did not name another's fault outside the chapter. He did not sell goods without leave. He did not take a weapon from a comrade without cause. Restraint in small things trained restraint in great things. Weekly chapters judged faults. The process was simple. A man stood. He named his fault. The chapter weighed it. Penance followed. Bread and water. Extra fasts. Loss of the cloak for a time. Separation at table. A repeat offender might face chains inside the house. The aim was correction, not disgrace. Names and details stayed inside the walls. The rule commanded that privacy. It protected reputations. It also frustrated outsiders who wanted stories. Closed doors kept order and fed suspicion. On the march, the marshal set rules. Keep formation. Hold to the banner. Do not pursue too far. Do not abandon a brother. Withdraw only on command. If the banner fell and could not be raised, men regrouped around the nearest officer. Horses were inspected and numbered. Gear was issued by the draper and clerks. The Tercopalier led light troops and scouts in the east. Supply trains moved with strict lists. The order prized lists more than boasts. A missing saddle drew more fury than a loud tale. Discipline made the temple predictable in war and finance. Money followed rules too. Commanderies sent surplus to regional treasuries. Clerks copied accounts on rolls. Couriers carried receipts. Depositors used letters of credit. A man could hand coin in London and reclaim value in Acre. Kings noticed. Debtors noticed more. The order guarded goods for pilgrims. Collected rents for widows. It held the chests of princes who did not trust their own officers. Trust gathered coin. Coin gathered pressure. Every privilege created one more grievance. Papal bulls fixed the order's legal stance. Exemption from many local dues. Right to collect alms. Freedom to pass tolls. Most sharp was direct subjection to the Pope. Bishops could not try internal cases. Local lords could not drag brothers into secular courts for chapter matters. Disputes rose to the master and to Rome. This shield helped the order do its work. It also made enemies. Townsmen resented loss of fees. Lords resented loss of sway. Clerics resented loss of jurisdiction. The same shield later helped a king's accusation. Back to Paris, 1307. The clerk finished reading. He accused the order of foul oaths. He accused spitting on sacred images. He accused idol worship. He accused obscene kisses. He named secret rites. He demanded the keys and the men. The senior brother asked to convene a chapter. He asked to answer in order before the brothers and then in court. He cited the rule. He cited the bulls. He spoke with care. He did not name penances. He did not describe internal rites. He kept the line the rule required. Silence now looked like proof to those outside. For shadow crept into the room by fact, not omen. The king owed. The order kept ledgers. The order kept silence. The order stood under Rome, not under Paris. Each point alone annoyed. Together they formed a case in the minds of those who needed one. Rumor had soil. Pressure had tools. The door hinge shook again. The sergeants read the final demand. The clerk unfolded cords and wax. The seal waited for a signature of receipt. The brothers stood in rows behind their senior. He had one breath to choose his next words. The senior brother asked for a final reading of the writ. He kept his tone even. He asked to convene a chapter and answer in order. The sergeants pressed. The clerk refused delay. The door strained. The moment forced the truth to the surface. The most feared rule was not a single line. It was a pair that worked together. First, the order answered to the Pope alone in its internal affairs. Second, the chapter judged faults inside the house and kept silence outside. That union made a wall few could breach. Closed jurisdiction and closed mouths frightened outsiders. The rule explained the process. Each week the brothers held chapter. A man stood. He confessed a fault. He named it simply: boasting, disobedience, idle talk, a forbidden visit, a fight. The brethren weighed it. The penance fit the weight. Bread and water, extra fast, loss of the white mantle for a time, sitting apart at table, a season without arms. For grave cases, chains inside the house. For rare, stubborn cases, removal from the order. No gossip followed. No tale left the room. Records stayed in the chest. A closed court breeds louder rumors. This privacy had a purpose. It protected reputations. Kept correction from turning into spectacle. It limited feuds. It prevented outsiders from twisting minor faults into scandal. But it looked like secrecy for its own sake to those who hated the order. Enemies filled gaps with tales. They spoke of spitting on sacred images. They spoke of obscene kisses. They spoke of hidden idols. They claimed tests no outsider had ever seen. They could not see the chapter. They did not trust what they could not see. The bulls that protected the order fed their anger. So did the chests that held other men's debts. Debt produces warrants. The feared daily rules made the wall higher. Brothers avoided kisses with women, even kin. They avoided idle talk. They slept in clothes with belts near and boots at hand. They obeyed signals. They did not trade gifts. They kept letters under control. They trained to move on command and to hold silence in public. All of this reduced leaks. All of this kept their inner life tight. That tightness made them reliable to kings and merchants. It also made them look alien to neighbors. Reliability to some looked like arrogance to others. The chapter's punishments left marks within the house. A man without his mantle carried shame. A man on bread and water grew lean at table. A man in chains did not join the ride. Outsiders saw only fragments. They drew lines between fragments that did not match the facts. When brothers refused to explain details, rumor hardened into charges. The order's legal shield ensured that local bishops could not probe past the door. Rivals called that immunity. The temple called it obedience to Rome. Immunity without explanation invites attack. Back to Paris, 1307. The clerk's list matched the market whispers. It asked about images. It asked about spitting. It asked about kisses between men. It asked about strange names spoken at reception. The senior brother knew the rule's reception rite. It demanded vows, not blasphemy. It warned the novice that the life would be hard. It gave no idol, no secret image, no obscene act. He also knew he could not discuss chapter penances without leave. He stood on that line and could not move. Some walls hold until hunger or heat break them. The open question now shifted. How would royal officers pierce a house sealed by bulls and silence? The answer stood behind the clerk in the corridor. Pressure, cells, and the crown's control of venue. The king would force the process into his hands. He would call his own examiners. He would use fear and pain to split the order's quiet. The Pope's seal still mattered, but the city's gates and towers belonged to the king. The brothers in Paris felt that weight in the air. Power changes the court before words begin. The senior brother took one more breath. He chose to ask for witnesses and a formal session. He named the bulls. He named the master. He promised that the house would appear when law required. The clerk raised the seal cord. The sergeants shifted their stances. The hinge gave a final cry. The bar dropped a finger's breadth. The brother turned, gave 2 orders in a low voice, and faced the door again. He put his hand on the bolt. He opened his mouth to speak as the iron pin began to slide. The bolt slid. The door opened. The clerk stepped in with the writ and a guard. The senior brother bowed and asked to read it in full. He did not raise his voice. He did not yield the line. He named the rule. He named the bulls. He asked to answer in chapter and then in court. The clerk refused delay. The guards took the keys and the seal. They counted the men. They sealed the chest. The house fell silent. Time narrows to a breath. By nightfall the brothers stood in a cold room below the hall. Torches spat. Wax ran onto iron brackets. The air tasted of smoke and lime. The clerk read the charges again. He asked the same list. Spitting on sacred images. Obscene kisses. Hidden idols. Foul oaths at reception. The senior brother kept his answers short. He named his vows. He repeated his request to speak only in order and with leave. He refused details of chapter penances. He obeyed the rule in the worst place to obey it. Obedience now looked like defiance. Days later, the process moved to cells. Moist walls. A bucket. Pallet. Chains rattled when a man shifted. Food came in a bowl. Water smelled of the cask. Officers came in pairs. They spoke low. They promised ease for cooperation. They warned of pain for silence. They returned again when the sun moved. They turned vows into a snare. Your rule binds your tongue, they said. Our law wants an answer. The senior brother held to the line he had drawn. He had no safe answer left. Weeks passed. Examiners increased the pressure. Some brothers began to stumble. A man tried to explain the reception. He spoke of vows and warning. He faltered when the clerk pushed the same words again. He retracted. He cried. He signed. Another asked to see the chapter before he spoke. He was told the chapter no longer judged here. The venue had moved. The crown chose the room. The crown chose the hour. The crown wrote the record. The papal shield stood far away. The closed wall had been opened by force. The senior brother watched men return from questions with eyes that did not settle. He saw wrists rubbed raw from cords. He saw mantles removed. He saw fasts turned from penance into punishment. He measured his own strength as he counted the days. He remembered each clause of the rule. He repeated them at night to steady thought. He feared not death but the line between truth and survival. If he lied to end pain, he would betray his vows. If he stayed silent, he would bend under force until words broke anyway. Every path cut into duty. The clerk pressed again. He asked about images. He asked about kisses. He asked about names spoken in the rite. He noted each pause. He offered terms. He hinted at mercy. He carried lists of those who had already signed. The senior brother asked to see them. The clerk refused. He asked instead for a full confession. He wanted the words in the record. He wanted the seal to close with them inside. Pressure is a craft, not an accident. One morning the guards led the brothers to a larger chamber. A table stood under a window slit. The clerk sat with 2 notaries. The sergeants lined the walls. A crowd hummed in the corridor beyond. The senior brother stood at the table. He looked at the wax on the cords. He looked at the empty space for his mark. He thought of the house he had kept. He thought of the chest and the names inside. He thought of the rule and the bulls. He thought of the novices who had whispered in the hall. He held his hands steady. Names carry weight here. He spoke first. He asked again to answer in order before the brothers and before the law together. He proposed that the chapter sit within sight of the officers. He offered to confess faults that the rule defined. He refused to confirm tales that no reception had taught. The clerk stared. The room held its breath. The sergeants shifted at the door. The notaries looked down at their rolls. The light from the slit moved a hand's breadth on the table. The next decision would fix a life. The clerk pushed the roll across the wood. He set the cord and seal in place. He told the senior brother to put down his mark. He said the crown would hear no more delays. He said the chapter had had its chance. The senior brother lowered his eyes to the parchment. He could see each line. He could see the words that would stand against him if he wrote them. He could see the emptiness that would stand against him if he refused. He drew a slow breath and raised his hand. He set his hand on the roll. He refused the lines that the clerk wanted. He affirmed his vows. He denied blasphemy. He asked again to answer before the chapter. The clerk shook his head. The seal closed without his mark. The guards led him back to the cell. The decision moved above him. Decisions climb when rooms grow small. Hearings followed in waves. Some brothers yielded and signed. Others retracted when questioned by papal envoys. Records split and contradicted each other. In 1310, in Paris, a group of brothers withdrew their earlier statements and demanded a fair council. The crown pressed harder. The venue stayed royal. The pressure stayed steady. The master, Jacques de Molay, waited under guard. Venue shapes verdicts before words begin. In 1311 to 1312, the Council of Vienne met. The Pope weighed papers, depositions, and politics. In March 1312, he issued a bull that dissolved the order as a matter of prudence and scandal. He did not convict the rule itself of heresy. He judged that the order could not be saved in the realm of rumor and royal will. A second bull assigned most goods to the Hospitallers. France seized much on its own terms. Local fights over barns, mills, and fields ran for years. Paper moves slower than men with keys. Individual trials continued. Some brothers were cleared. Some were jailed. Some wore chains until death. Some worked on farms under watch. Paris held the last act for the leaders. In March 1314, after long delay, the crown announced sentences for the master and for 3 others. They were to live in prison. The master rose and declared his old confessions false. He demanded to speak to the people. He held to the rule and to his vows. The judges called that a relapse. They handed him to the city. Relapses end fast under a king's gaze. That evening, on an island in the Seine, a pyre stood ready. Crowds gathered. Officers cleared a space. The master and a fellow leader faced the fire. No long speech survives in a role that all agree on. Chroniclers give versions. What stood certain was this: they died without the white cloaks they had once worn. The smoke rose above the water. The crown counted the case closed. Executions end records. They do not end questions. Across Europe, commanderies shifted hands. Hospitallers collected many properties outside France. In Iberia, new orders formed to hold the lands under local crowns. Former Templars took oaths as sergeants, clerks, or tenants. Some vanished into towns. Some married. Some entered other houses. The ledgers of the temple did not vanish. Methods moved on. Letters of credit survived. Clear lists survived. Tight discipline in stores and trains survived in other hands. Practices outlived the banners that taught them. What then had men feared most? Not a hidden idol. Not a secret kiss. They feared a system that answered to Rome and kept its judgments inside. They feared men who trained to hold silence and obey in all things. They feared a ledger that bound kings like any debtor. When the crown wanted that wall gone, it moved the court, seized the keys, and used pain and venue to split the quiet. The feared rules were public all along. Jurisdiction and chapter silence, working together, made the armor that others could not see until it cracked. The plain text hid in open sight. The senior brother did not see the end of every suit. He had no control over bulls and courts. He kept one thing that no clerk could stamp. He kept the vow that had ordered his life. He kept it in a cell, in a yard, and in the last room they gave him. His story closed with no cloak and no crowd. The rule he carried did not make a speech. It held his tongue to the end. A vow grows heavier when witnesses fade. And now you are back at the door on that October morning. You smell damp wool and oil. You feel the belt at your hip. You hear the bar strain. You know which rules they fear and why. You set your hand on the bolt and choose the line you will hold. One house can fall. Discipline travels. If you want more clear stories from the past, follow and stay for the next chapter.